when it became time for the government to make this specific recognition and this specific change in relation to recognition of Palestine, could you at least provide me with the date on which the Office of International Law gave advice to the government recently?
We'll take that on notice.
Okay.
Recognizing Palestinian statehood is absolutely absurd because it absolutely means nothing. Who is Palestine? Who's running their statehood? Where is their statehood? However, there seems to be a group of heads of countries who decided to reward Hamas for the terror attacks on October 7 by declaring Palestinian statehood, which in effect is absolutely meaningless. Well, let's listen to this discussion and let's discuss it afterwards. Kindly subscribe to our channel so a little bit of light will push away a lot of darkness.
There must be some sort of legal definition that we use to determine whether something is a state.
There are some, traditional criteria that are relevant, but the ultimate decision of whether to recognise is a political one.
What are the traditional criteria?
They are a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states.
So my understanding is those are the criteria set out under the Montevideo Convention, is that correct?
Correct.
So they're not traditional criteria, they're something that's set out under a convention.
But a decision whether to recognise is a political decision.
Does Palestine have agreed borders which define its territory?
I think I can't give legal advice on the application of those criteria to the committee. I think I would point the committee to...
It's a physical question, not a legal question. Does Palestine have agreed borders which define its territory?
I would refer that to DFAT.
Really?
Yes.
Does Palestine have a single government in effective control of its territory?
Senator, I think this is in fact legal advice because it's the application of criteria, so it would be giving you advice on legal considerations.
I think these questions are in relation to factual matters, though, not legal advice that you may or may not have provided the government. The question is, does Palestine have agreed borders and do they have a single government? I would have thought that was a pretty straightforward, factual yes or no answer.
So, Senator, our involvement is with the Office of International Law as international legal advisors. Ms. Sheehan's directed you to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
Okay. Did the Office of International Law give advice to the government on whether Australia's recognition of a Palestinian state was legitimate?
We have given advice to government on the issue of recognition.
When was that advice provided, Ms. Sheehan?
We need to take that on notice, I think, because...
Yeah, I think we might need to take on notice the precise dates. There would have been probably multiple occasions on which we provided advice.
Multiple occasions on which you provided advice?
Yes.
Over the scope of many years.
Many years. How many years, Ms Jones?
I think in my time in the department, this issue has come up numerous times, probably over the last 15 years.
Over the last 15 years?
But look, that's actually, I should be careful. I wouldn't be precise, but it's come up multiple times.
Okay, well, I think it would be useful for the committee to at least know how many times you've had to provide advice on this matter since the Labor government have been in power. And I'd hope that it would be relatively straightforward for some official here to provide that information to the committee before the end of this section of the program today. So when it became time for the government to make this specific recognition and this specific change in relation to recognition of Palestine, could you at least provide me with the date on which the Office of International Law gave advice to the government recently?
We'll take that on notice.
Okay. What's the capital of Palestine?
Senator, we can't comment on that.
Because you don't know, or because you're legally unsure?
Well, I think it's not a matter for this department, Senator.
Do you know what the capital of Israel is?
Senator, I don't think that's a matter within the Attorney General's responsibilities.
Was the Office of International Law asked for advice on any of these questions that I have asked you today?
We've agreed to take on notice the dates of advice we've given.
Was the Office of International Law ever asked to provide advice on whether a state can be recognised on a conditional basis?
Senator, I think that's starting to get into the content of advice that we wouldn't comment on.
Okay, generally speaking, can recognition of a state ever be conditional?
Senator, that would constitute legal advice.
I'm trying to figure out if I can phrase that in a way where it wouldn't constitute legal advice. I mean, going back to the evidence that you provided that apparently recognition of a state is a political question, but there is a legal framework under the Montevideo Convention that we utilise to make that determination. Does the Montevideo Convention allow for conditional recognition of a state?
I think that would be providing legal advice to the committee.
Okay. On the 11th of August, when the Prime Minister announced that Australia would recognise Palestine, he outlined a series of commitments which Australia had obtained in the course of the government's decision to recognise Palestine. And the Prime Minister said, "Our government has made it clear that there can be no role for the terrorists of Hamas in any future Palestinian state. This is one of the commitments Australia has sought and received from President Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. The PA has reaffirmed it recognises Israel's right to exist in peace and security. It's committed to demilitarise and to hold general elections. It is pledged to abolish the system of payments to the families of prisoners and martyrs and promise broader reform of governance, financial transparency in the education system, including international oversight to guard against the incitement of violence and hatred. These detailed and significant commitments have been given even greater weight by the Arab League's unprecedented demand for Hamas to end its rule in Gaza and surrender its weapons to the Palestinian authorities. But those commitments have no bearing on whether Palestine is recognised as a state legally. Would that be correct?"
I think the government's decision was to recognise the state of Palestine, and it's now done so.
Yes. But the Prime Minister outlined a series of conditions that he, or commitments that he had sought and seemingly obtained. But the reality is, when it comes to that legal recognition, there's no way of guaranteeing that those commitments would be seen through.
Yeah, I think what my understanding of what the Prime Minister was setting out was what considerations the government was taking into account in its decision, which it's now taken to recognise.
But when the government is going through the process of recognising that state, I mean, those commitments are all sort of future-looking things. There's no legal way of guaranteeing that those things have to occur before recognition can take place. Is that correct?
I think I would just repeat my earlier answer that there were political considerations, and it's ultimately a political decision to decide to recognise.
The Prime Minister obviously said in that quote that I just read out that Hamas can play no role in the future of a Palestinian state. If in due course Palestine holds elections and Hamas is elected, can we revoke recognition of Palestinian statehood legally?
I think that would amount to providing legal advice to the committee.
you can't tell us whether or not Australia would be recognising a terrorist state if Hamas is elected the government of Palestine?
Senator, there's a number of hypotheticals there, and we would not generally respond to hypotheticals here at Estimates.
Can the department confirm that the recognition of Palestine as a state is a legal question that is not tied to the conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Senator, I think Machine has said a couple of times that it's ultimately a political decision that the government has taken. I'm not sure we can provide any further commentary.
Can the department confirm that recognition of Palestine as a state is a legal question that doesn't prevent violence, doesn't get aid through and doesn't release hostages?
Well, I think just have to reiterate the point that Mr G and Machine have made, that ultimately it is a political decision.
Fair to say that's a pretty frustrating series of responses from the officials today. I mean, Minister, the truth is that this decision to recognise Palestine wasn't about achieving peace in the Middle East. It wasn't about the situation on the ground. It was around, frankly, satisfying your party's membership base, which I know you feel very strongly about this issue. Isn't that right?
I would completely disagree with you, Senator. And I think it was about peace and trying to bring a peaceful resolution to the Middle East. For the whole of my life, there's been conflict in the Middle East, and the events of 2 years ago tomorrow, of course, were just another terrible indication of what's been happening in that region for far too long. A group of countries, including the United Kingdom, France, Canada, so people, countries that we often identify with internationally, made similar decisions that one way to progress the issue of peace in the Middle East, particularly in these most difficult of circumstances, was to provide recognition to the Palestinians. And that decision, as you've been questioning the officials, was made earlier this year. I know it would be disappointing from the Coalition's point of view if peace did occur in the Middle East, because you'd then have nothing to well, no. You, with respect, Senator.
With respect.
Yeah, well, with respect, I was answering the question, and you made allegations that this whole issue is about domestic Australian internal Labor Party politics. This is not about any of those things. This is about trying to provide a peaceful settlement, which certainly this government wants to see in the Middle East. Nobody wants to see the fighting continue.
Of course.
Nobody, more than the Labor Party, would like to see an end to the conflict in that region, and that includes the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. So to the extent that as a government we can influence international events, then we want to stake our claim to a peaceful resolution of this issue. And if, as reports are already suggesting, that there may be a peace deal in the next few days, nothing would give the Labor Party, nothing would give the Prime Minister, nothing would give me greater satisfaction to know that something that an Australian government had done had contributed to the peaceful outcome in the Middle East.
Minister.
Well, I know. I would say the same thing about the Greens. Once there's peace in the Middle East, once peace is achieved in the Middle East, of course, you have nothing further to contribute to this debate. Both the Greens and the Coalition are in the same position. The Labor Party wants to see a peaceful resolution. The Labor Party wants to see the Labor Party wants to see a peaceful resolution.
Senators, can I just give us a bit of a reset?
Resolution to the issues.
Sorry, Minister, can I get you to pause for a second? Senators, can we just take a breath? I want to allow Senator Chandler to finish her final couple of questions, and I will encourage senators not to interject, please. Senator Chandler.
Thank you very much, Chair. The problem I have with what we've discussed here this afternoon is that the evidence of the department was that it was a political decision to recognise Palestinian statehood, but then a series of questions around what conditions may or may not have to have been satisfied to agree on statehood were effectively legal advice. So I'm just trying to understand how the decision to recognise statehood was made in terms of whether the government sought advice from you to say legally can we do this, and you said legally yes we can, or you said legally yes we can't, or you said legally things have changed at this point in time. But I don't think we can say that it's a purely political decision and then for the department to say, but we provide legal advice on that because, you can't have both in an effect.
So I think that is consistent, Senator, in the sense that it is ultimately a decision for government. We've taken on notice to indicate the dates on which we've given advice, but there are some indicia, but ultimately it is a matter for government to make that decision.
Minister, can you answer my questions about Palestine having agreed borders which define its territory, or Palestine having a single government in effective control of its territory?
I can answer what I know about the Middle East, but I think it would be more appropriate if you've got questions of that nature that we either refer it to the Attorney General herself, or for that matter to the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
Senator Chandler has tried and tried and tried. She truly asked the same questions that you and I ask. She has asked very simple, clear questions. They weren't legal questions, but there are real questions that needs to be asked. Well, this event occurred in Down and Under, 7,000 miles away from us. But yet they had the audacity to decide over continents of what should happen in Israel. What gives them the right to dictate who should be a state, who should not be a state? Well, we all know why they did it. We all know how many Muslims have been allowed and the pressure they are under politically that forced them into joining the team of recognizing a Palestinian state. It seems to me many have forgotten that there were 5 opportunities for Palestinian statehood. 5 times in the last 77 years for Palestinian statehood. Even as far back when Bill Clinton, President Clinton, and Yasser Arafat met with the Oslo Accords, and Israel's ready to give up like 95% of Judea Samaria, what they refer to as the West Bank. Concessions after concessions. And I believe Israel has finally learned when you give concessions, that's when it comes back to you to bite. Let me play that out to you. In 2005, August 15, at the time, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, a decorated general who helped us win the Yom Kippur War, and many other wars, he wanted to give peace a chance. Unfortunately, his choice was not the right choice. How do we know that? We look at the end result. At the time, what his choice was, in 2005, just 20 years ago, August 15, he gave away a part of Israel to the Palestinians. He gave away Gaza. Gaza that has been in possession, that has been part of Israel for thousands of years. He carved it out and gave it to them. Gaza can be a beautiful coastal developed city. It could be like a French Riviera. It is spectacularly beautiful alongside the Mediterranean. They had an opportunity then to turn Gaza into a metropolis, to turn Gaza into a first world country. They could have built high rises and an industry and have an airport and have hotels, resorts along the coast, tourists from all over the world. It could have been like Beirut was. And yet, they turned it down. And they turned Gaza into a hellhole of a state, of a country, governed by bloodthirsty terrorists in a death cult, in a jihadist movement, who swears to the annihilation of Israel and all the Western states. So they had the opportunity of statehood. But yet, they turned it down 5 times. What is the point of announcing Palestinian statehood? It's empty words. There are no Palestinians because they are Jordanians. They don't have a government. They don't have a capital. They don't have a country. What is the point of announcing Palestinian statehood? And you gave all these conditions that they need to recognize Israel's right for existence, they need to disarm themselves, they need to denounce terrorism, and all these conditions. But you announced the statehood before they filled any of those conditions. I ask you, would you invite a terror group to be your neighboring state? Fool me once, fool me twice, try to fool me again. Israel has learned its lesson. October 7 is a direct result when we gave away property, holy territory. We gave it away for the false belief that there'll be peace. We know throughout all history, appeasement only brings war. Strength through peace. Peace through strength. When you fortify your borders and you are strong, you keep the enemy at bay, far away. When you appease them, it only comes back to bite you. Look what happened in Gaza, October 7, 2023. This was exactly 20 years after Ariel Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel, gave away Gaza with the hopes of attaining peace. Well, history has taught us to learn from history. If we don't learn from history, we're due to repeat it. We have seen what happened when we tried to appease and give the Palestinians a chance to making statehood. They are not interested in statehood. They are clearly, unequivocally interested in annihilating Israel and the West. They're not looking to build us. They had a chance. They had decades of opportunity to have a state. That's not what they're interested in. They just want one state, and that is Israel. What they have forgotten is that Jewish people were in Israel way before Muhammad began Islam. Jewish people have title to the land of Israel that God has given us 3,337 years ago. We have a title. The title is called the 5 Books of Moses. We're numerous times where it refers to Israel as our homeland. They have zero claim to Israel. Israel, in 1948, came back to reclaim its homeland after the Romans dispersed them and destroyed Jerusalem and the temple 2,000 years ago. After 2,000 years, we were able to come back to our homeland. Islam was not around at the time when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. They have absolutely zero claim to Israel. Jerusalem is not even mentioned in the Quran, not even once. So the world needs to recognize these facts and stop pointing fingers on Israel and the Jewish people. Realize that we are people who are obsessed with the living and life and peace. We'll do anything for peace. We have tried and tried again and again and again to have peace with our neighbors. As Golda Meir once brilliantly said, if the Arabs put their arms down, there'll be peace. If Israel puts the arms down, there'll be bloodshed. How true is that? I hope the world could digest that and recognize it and realize to side with the right side of history. God bless you. God loves you.